women need to come together, raise one voice, and support each other as they work towards common goals of leadership, advocacy, and of course, community building. Now, one would recall the historic 1995 Beijing Conference on Women, where global attention was brought to the power of collective female action. Now, women need to be each other's keeper and take intentional steps to uplift one another, especially in leadership roles. Statistics today show that women make about 51% of the population of the United States of America, for instance, but hold only 29% of executive leadership positions. This creates an undeniable necessity for more women to get into leadership roles. Well, some observers have held, and strongly so, that women leaders need to prosper and, of course, show positive social change, which is, of course, possible. Now, featuring at the upcoming Columbus Women Connect Multicultural Annual Conference, we are told will be Lema Roberta, who is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate from West Africa. We're also going to have Frank Franzier, who is an award-winning educator and racial equity advocate. So these women plus others will be sharing their thoughts and insights on feminine leadership and advocacy in diverse communities. But before they do so, we are receiving two other women here in the studio. First, the lead, the organizer of this Women's Network Conference, which will happen on November the 2nd this year, Lindora Howard Diawara. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Right.
So Lindora is her name. She's the founder of the Business for Peace Community Development Foundation. She's accompanied here in the studio of Apex One Radio today by Mabel Castella, who is also a community leader. Gentle ladies, you're welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
Doing great, thank you.
All right. Welcome to Apex One Radio. I know you've been here before, correct?
Yes, this
All
is my
right.
second time.
That was a long time ago. But you're making your first entrance into the Apex One Radio studio for the first time, correct?
Yes.
All right. So you're welcome. First things first, let me begin with Lindora. I know when you came here and you were interviewed by Grace a few years ago, you talked about the Business for Peace Community Development Foundation. But for our listeners who did not have the opportunity to listen to you when you came here, they'll probably want to know what this organization is all about. Can you go back and explain to us what the Business for Peace Community Development Foundation is all about?
Thank you very much for having me, for having us here today. And it's a pleasure again being here. I think actually I was here last year, if I'm not making a mistake. Yeah, the Business for Peace Community Development Foundation is a nonprofit that is global in nature, and we aspire to grow as a social enterprise.
Mhm.
Now, those are two big words, but basically, we registered here in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, in 2015. We registered in Liberia, West Africa, in 2017, and we continue to grow our work gradually.
Mhm.
So basically, the foundation will be 9 years old in December. We set out to promote women empowerment and foster gender equality because as part of my work, I identify as a women's rights, civil society, and peace activist
Mhm.
because of my background. I've done a lot of work around issues of peace building, conflict resolution, transformation, prevention, and whatnot. I've done a lot of work with women, with civil society actors. I've worked across communities in West Africa, engaged with people across the world in different parts.
Mhm.
And so, with that background and having worked with women for a long time, I came to the US in 2014. I came here to do a master's program. I had a scholarship. And I thought that was a good opportunity to reflect on the kind of work that I had done with other women in West Africa, in Africa, and other parts of the world.
Mhm.
That gave me the opportunity to basically reflect on that work, but also experience what women in the US were experiencing,
Right.
family members, friends, others that I didn't know, but that I came across.
Mhm.
And so the lessons learned from there, because when I came to school, I came with the idea that I would come to my studies and go back, but create an organization to help change the narrative, to help improve the situation of women and girls in Liberia, in
Mhm.
Africa, and eventually in other parts of the world. The lessons that I learned, for a moment, I tell people that my experience here during those 2 years of studies made me somehow traumatized,
Mm.
because when you are outside of the US, you hear all of the good things. You don't necessarily hear about those things that would be shocking, the shocks that people experience, the challenges that they experience when they come to the US and they live here. And so I thought, no, why can't I be here thinking about creating an organization to go back to work on that in Africa?
Mhm.
I'm going to have it work both in the diaspora, in the US, in other parts of the world, but also in Africa. So basically, our work focuses on empowering women and girls, and we have a mission to increase and sustain the voice and agency of women and girls
Mhm.
by building their capacities to access resources and tools for social cohesion, for economic and economic empowerment, economic and political empowerment, but also financial independence.
Mhm.
Because we think that when women have those tools, they have the necessary capacities to lead and to do what is necessary across communities, and they become financially independent or free, they can work wonders. And
Mhm.
so that's our focus, that's our goal, and that's who we are as an organization. So far, we have organized groups in Liberia, in New York, and I'm so excited to be working with real strong women leaders across this city
Mhm.
to organize here in Columbus this time around.
Mm.
Amazing. So since 2015, when the organization was registered and you started doing work here in the States and in Liberia, how has women in general, or maybe those in Liberia, embraced the organization and the idea, and what have been the impact so far?
The idea has been embraced by a lot of people. When I first started off, and I talk of my grad studies, and I shared this before, that this organization grew out of that study. I had the option to basically write a research paper.
Mm.
I said I wanted something that would come alive.
Mhm.
And so I decided I would not go with the research route. I will go with the capstone route. And so the concept note for this foundation was what I presented for my capstone project. And so in the academia here in the US, people who don't necessarily understand so much about peace building work, conflict transformation work, working with women, building a movement, and so forth, a lot of them thought, don't you think you're doing too much?
Mhm.
That is too ambitious. They thought it was too ambitious. They thought it would be impossible, at least to talk about working here in the diaspora and working in Africa.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? So there were a lot of comments that could have discouraged me, but
Mhm.
being there and done that,
Mhm.
I knew what I was seeing in terms of the vision.
Mhm.
And all I prayed for at that point in time was I just prayed for long life to see it through. So as time went by, I travel back and forth to Africa whenever I can.
Mhm.
I try as much as possible every 1 or 2 years to go back. And I also try to maintain my network.
Mhm.
And I think that's the challenge with a lot of us that come here to the US. Some of us come and we don't look back.
Yeah.
Some of us come and we look back, but it's not very often. So depending on our individual circumstances, it determines what we do, the actions we take in that direction.
Mhm.
So I've maintained my network. Women that I've worked with, when I came and organized the foundation and went back to Liberia, what did I do? I went back to those very women that I have worked with before, the very organization that I worked for before, the West African Network for Peace Building. And I said, hey, I've been having this dream. I've been having this idea to create a foundation.
Mhm.
It's now registered, and here is the new path. We've now registered it in Liberia. So I talked
Mhm.
about the organization and tried to get feedback.
Okay.
So I have been having and holding consultations. So a huge majority of the people that I've been talking with have embraced it, but
Mhm.
others have been skeptical because they really didn't understand the nuts and bolts of everything we're trying to do.
Mhm.
But generally, as people understand, the more they understand, the more they embrace the concept, and people continue to come on board. And so that's how we've been able to expand gradually.
Okay, briefly before I go to Castella, could you just name one or two things that the organization has done that you think has created an impact and reflect its reason for creation, by the way?
Thank you so much for that question. Impact. Impact is a big word. And most times people say, what have you done in terms of impact? What have you done in terms of impact? What we've been doing over the last 9 years, and because this has been something new, and it has taken time for us to build to where we are. We have put a lot of time, my team and I have put in a lot of effort in terms of trying to build our organization.
Mhm.
So just trying to look at institutional issues, governance issues, how we really build an organization that grows to be able to deal with what we are trying to do on the one hand. In terms of impact, last year we went to Liberia, and we basically launched the foundation in Liberia, but not just that, we launched a corporation. What we are trying to do here in Columbus on the second, we are calling it a women's collective. It is also a corporation. It's a network of women, whatever nomenclature people give it. In Liberia, we launched the Bon County Women and Youth Development Corporation.
Mhm.
We didn't want to do that. We also launched the Bon County Women and Youth Solidarity Fund. So through that, we worked with community leaders to fundraise. They fundraise, they raise some money to be able to invest in their own work. We established, we are working on building the structures there. Those very women and youth have been meeting. They have a steering committee that is guiding them. We have a partner in the county that has just, since last month, they did a capacity needs assessment because we want to see where the capacity gaps are when it comes to the steering committee to be able to now fundraise and build their capacity. So we are very excited about a partnership with the Development Education Network in Liberia. They were the ones who did that assessment. We also, through that group, the Vice President of the Republic of Liberia, Madam Jewel Howard Taylor, for example, came to the launch of the foundation. She made a pledge to continue to support the women in the county. Afterwards, she was able to mobilize resources for a specific group of women that I've worked with also on the issues of peace building. It's called the WIPNET Women. And she gave them $1,500,000 Liberian dollars. We've worked with them to look at their agricultural projects. We're now designing a program, agribusiness program, through which they can now come from just planting little stuff to growing their agricultural projects and eventually growing it to the point where they become business owners, have agribusinesses. And so capacity wise, things are the women are developing gradually, learning to work more together, even though they've been doing that, but want to scale that in Liberia. In the US, it's like I said, it's just been about growing our organization and mobilizing. So in terms of impact, we've come from having very little people informed about what we are doing to having more than 3,000 people now paying attention to what we are doing. We have a lot of events. We're talking about the issues and whatnot. So the numbers are growing, and we are now at a point where we are trying to fundraise to do actual work that can now show changes over time.
The numbers are actually growing. We're speaking with the founder of the Business for Peace Community Development Foundation, Lindora Howard Diawara. She is also the main organizer of the upcoming Multicultural Annual Conference for Women. Let me turn to Mabel Castella. Tell us what was your interest, before getting into leadership? What prompted you to become a community leader?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for having me here today. My interest comes from being an immigrant. So, being an immigrant, I went through challenges when I came to the United States. Many challenges, you name it. It could be the language, the cultural crash. So I decided to share my experience with others, so other people didn't have to go through the same things that I went through, just because I didn't have the knowledge about where to find resources, where to go to ask for help, And that's how I end up in community leadership.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And so, what are some of the things that you have done which you can stand up for and say, yes, truly you are into that role as a community leader?
Well, one of the things is I have volunteered in many community-based organizations,
Hmm.
non-profit organizations.
Hmm.
Some like targeting Latinos, Hispanic like me,
Hmm.
and some others just targeting immigrants in general. So I think that besides your the place you are coming from, we share as immigrants, we share something,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
that's my main inspiration. Like just helping immigrants in general.
Hmm.
And during my work volunteering, I have realized that we have so much in common, so much in common, and then that has been my inspiration to keep working in community leadership.
Hmm.
Amazing. Um, let's talk about the upcoming conference that is being organized by the Business for Peace Community Development Foundation and Madam Lindora Howard Tuawari. What was the inspiration behind this event?
Thank you very much for that question. Let me take off from where Mabel. I call her Mabel. That's the French way of calling
Come
it,
close to your microphone.
even though it doesn't have a double L. Yeah, but let me pick up from what she said in terms of finding out that we all have a lot in common.
Mhm,
I have been fortunate to work with people from different backgrounds.
mhm,
And like I said, when I came to the US and just listening to the stories that people had gone, their experiences of other women here that were both my family members, that were friends, but people that I just didn't know at all. And
mhm.
I just said, but these are the same issues that we are dealing with in Africa,
Yeah.
in Liberia, in everywhere I've been. So how come when it comes to issues of development work and really making noise or talking about the issues of conflict transformation and stuff, I had the impression somehow that the US in general or the West in general saw a place like Africa as the place that needed, or maybe Asia or other developing countries as the place that needed those kinds of support, but not necessarily within. And
Yeah.
that was the whole idea for trying to figure out what was really happening. As
Mhm,
I've stayed here over time and interacted with other women, maybe Mabel and I, we met through the New American Leadership Academy. That's an academy that's supported by is hosted and supported by the city of Columbus. That's how we got to meet. And we kind of connected.
mhm,
And we've been talking since 2021 about the issues that women face, how we can work together, what can we do to help improve the situation. But she's not the only one. As I speak to other women across this city,
mhm,
same issues. So then I had this whole idea, starting from the Liberian community, to see if women can really come together to do something. We have the phenomenal women, for example, within the Liberian community. We meet, we try to do things to support the community, but I didn't see women, professional women, coming together to really work on issues of advocacy and
mhm,
social change. And because that's what we try to promote, I've been just trying to talk to people to say, can we come together? But the funny thing is, every time I mention it to someone, it's like, I've thought about it before. Yes,
mhm.
let's do that. But we say that and we move on, nothing happens.
Yeah.
Talk to another person. Oh, yes, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And it never happens. So this time around, I said to my sisters like Mabel and others, I say, you know what? This is the idea. So we talked about it last December when we had our 8th anniversary celebration. The
Mhm,
idea of a conference came up. And so here we are this year. Now I'm preparing for that conference. We sent out the word, informed a lot of people. We had our first meeting at Easton at Cohatch because as a foundation, we had a scholarship from Cohatch, so we do meetings there and whatnot. And we had that first meeting, and everybody else embraced it. We chose our date. We had talked about what it is that we wanted to do. It wasn't clear. We had a second meeting. So we've been meeting virtually, different women. So far, we have a group of women in our chat room. We're about 60 women from at least 20 countries
mhm.
around the world. And so it's just an exciting moment for me and also for all of those that are part of this process.
I'm interested in knowing more about how CWC is organized, and I understand this a group of women who also do their own individual projects and have their own organizations, but they're now coming as a network, of these groups and these organizations. So, who becomes a member of this platform? What are the requirements?
In terms of where we are at the moment, those things are not clearly defined in
Okay.
terms of who becomes, in terms of requirements.
Mm-hmm.
But for time being, women from all across Columbus, women from everywhere can become a member, specifically in Columbus, because we want to be able to have that face-to-face interaction. Once we organize the membership, then that connection between the women that we've organized in New York can be made, and we have platforms for that. I can talk about it before we leave. So basically, the way, like you said, these are all women leaders, nonprofit leaders, business owners that are coming together. We had a meeting last night, and one thing that was that has been made very clear since we started off is that don't see this as something that we're going to register as a 501c3. No, we all have our 501c3s. So the Columbus Women Connect creates that space for us to come in to network, to do joint actions. And that's why it's referred to as a collective. We can call it a cooperative. We can call it a network. We can come together, but the foundation will be the facilitator in terms of organizing meetings, guiding whatever, fundraising efforts that we want to do. But the collective is expected to identify their own leaders. So we hope to have a steering committee that will work hand in hand with the foundation to get those things that we want done on the ground and across the city.
Let me just understand this again, because it's not going to be another 501c thing. Yet there will be donations, there will be fundraising, there will be activities that resemble what a typical 501c or nonprofit would look like. So how are you going to manage all of that and not get, how are you going to manage all of that without it being that 501c you're talking about? Because I see 501c activities within it.
Correct. So the foundation is a 501c3. Okay. And like I mentioned, that the foundation serves as the facilitator, for the collective. The collective is going to identify their leaders, the steering team that would now work directly hand in hand with the foundation. So in terms of financial or fiscal responsibilities, because like you mentioned, we are encouraging donations. That money comes to the foundation. We have a specific account as a foundation that will be open for the collective. And the steering committee, we will have like a signatory to that account as well. And this is what we do in Liberia, for example. We have that collective there. They have their own account. We have signatories to that account. As executive director of the foundation, I am also a signatory to that account, but I am not a signatory to that account. So when the corporation on the ground needs money, the steering committee meet, they discuss the programs, what they want to do. We meet together and agree on those programs. Once it's agreed upon, then the authorization is given to the signatories to withdraw that money. They act they go ahead and implement their actions and report, and we work with them to finalize the report and submit it to whichever donor or partner that we have. The same thing is going to apply here. And so in terms of that component, the foundation, we have the overall fiscal responsibility to do that, but in partnership with the collective. Especially the leadership.
Before Grace jumps in, let's talk more about, let's get into the crux of your conference. The first edition of this conference will take place on November the 2nd, as we said, and it's going to be placed under the theme Feminine Leadership and Advocacy, Pathways to Social Cohesion and Prosperity. So I'm very interested when I see themes, and I go word after word and want to know exactly if those words are just placed or they actually have meanings. So I will start with feminine leadership, for instance, and I would want you to make your own assessment of women in leadership positions. I know you've been working in this domain and you would know. So as we speak, across the world and in every industry. What is your take on the representation of women? Is it okay? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse?
Well, thank you very much for that question. First of all, the themes here, they weren't just placed.
Okay.
Each of those words have
Have
a
meaning.
specific space,
Mhm.
and we're going to discuss each of those words at the conference.
Mhm.
So when it comes to women's representation, women's political participation, when we talk about decision making, everywhere based on my experience, based on the data, based on what's in the media and everywhere else, we're not there yet. It
Mhm.
fluctuates. Okay, it goes up, it comes down. But one thing that I see that is improving in terms of the awareness level, that is increasing. You have, when I look at my own country, for example, Liberia, I see a lot more younger women that are getting involved with advocacy work.
Mhm.
When I was some of their ages, a lot of people my age didn't get involved. I got involved in this work from high school. I
Mhm.
was very young, and I didn't know what I was going into, but it was interesting. I found it interesting. I got excited about working with people. But a lot of my friends didn't follow me because they thought I was wasting my time
Okay.
behind older women. But when I look back in Liberia today and I see a whole network of young women pushing for governance,
Mhm.
speaking out, that's for me, that intergenerational change is, there's a lot more awareness that has been created.
Mhm.
In terms of the numbers, it's another thing because some places there are quota systems where, for example, people say 30% inclusion of women on the vote the nomination roster. I've worked in a place like Mali before, and what I found interesting was that even though they had that quota system as well, but they said the first 10 there should be women, 5 women in that first 10.
Mhm.
And what women themselves told me was that the strategy men were using was that because when you go to the nomination, the people who are most likely to get nominated are those at the top. So they will put the women at the bottom of the roster. So very few women were being nominated on each party. So things, are different in some other places. I know in Liberia, still, even though we had the first female president in Africa, the issue of quota is still being debated in the Liberian legislature.
Mhm.
And so, but the political participation, when we look here in Ohio, let's look at our councils, the city council. When we look at the city across, I mean, how many women are really around? I know there are women. The mayor in Ohio, for example, has been making a concerted effort to appoint women in different positions, but that's because he has the appointing power. But in terms of elected positions, women are pushing, but more needs to be done.
Okay. Perfect.
Amazing. So being a women's activist from a young age, trying to get into women organization and working with people, how does this conference bridge the gap from the older and younger women generation?
I worked for a long time with the West Africa Network for Peace Building, an organization in West Africa that has countries in all West African offices in all West African countries today. Um, when we worked, that organization had a women's program called the Women in Peace Building Network.
Mhm.
That's where I got my specific intentional trainings on women, peace, and security issues. When we worked during that time, and I look back because I started off there as a participant, I became a sort of intern, not a program assistant. That was my first title, and I worked with one of our current 2011 Nobel Peace Prize laureates, Lima Bowie. I
Mhm.
worked with her. She hired me. I worked with her then, but I was like the youngest at the secretariat.
Mhm.
And I learned through that process. I became program coordinator for being her assistant. When she left Liberia, I took over the program. I said, "No, Lema, I'm not going to take this. I can't do this. All these women, they're older than me." But those women had respect for me. They called
Mhm.
me their mother till this day. When I go to Liberia, and I owe it to them, I go and find those who I can find. I'd say I'm here to pay my respect. And so that relationship had been cordial. But when
Mhm.
I look back as a leader in that organization, who eventually became the national network coordinator of ONEP Liberia overall. One of the things that I know that we didn't do too well was to really hold onto the hands of the younger women.
Mhm.
So that was a big gap in our work.
Mhm.
And so as I built this foundation, work with team members to build this organization from ground up,
Mhm.
one of the things that I've said over and again is that when we prepare to move out, we have to make sure we have that intergenerational component.
Mhm.
So it's a very big component of our work. And
Mhm.
so for this conference, one of the things we've said to all of the women that are part of this group so far is that when you come to that conference, bring your daughters along.
Mhm.
I have two daughters. I'm saying to them, you're following me on that day. So
Mhm.
let's have the young women. So we have a special session
Mhm.
with the young women. We'll have workshops, and we are looking at ages 9 through 21.
Mhm.
To be in those specific workshops, we have one of the women who will be guiding that workshop discussion with them. And so, yes, it's very key to us.
We're talking about women leadership on radio today ahead of the November 2nd Multicultural Annual Conference organized by the Columbus Women Connect. And whose lead, of course, is one of our guests in the studio today. Let me turn to Mabel and come back a little bit to leadership. Why are we talking about feminine leadership today? Are women being refused leadership positions? Per se, because she's a leader, you are one, and it's a free world, it's an open world. So why specific is female leadership different from other forms of leadership?
Okay, well, that's a good question.
Go ahead.
We we have already been through. We have seen it. In my case, coming to America and working my way to corporate, I realized that sometimes the path to leadership for women have
Mhm.
more challenges than for a man.
Okay.
Our challenges are completely different from a man. So, and people don't see those details.
Mhm.
So that's why it's important that in this conference we get together, women getting together and discussing these challenges of
Mhm.
getting to that specific leadership path. I came to America and it took me years to finally land corporate American, even though my background was professional.
Mhm.
So I mean, I already had the knowledge, I already had the experience,
Mhm.
but I like the language.
Mhm.
Okay, I took my time learning the language, but I'm still here pushing that path to the
Mhm.
leadership.
Mhm.
And I see other cases and it was different. So the idea is to discuss these challenges and find a way for everyone to participate.
Mhm.
There are a lot of talented women leaders,
Yeah.
like by nature,
Mhm.
and the idea is to share with them what actually makes them successful,
Mhm.
so we can actually learn from them and share our experiences. And, okay, what doesn't work and what works.
Mhm. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll stay with you to talk about advocacy because I also found it in your theme. What advocacy are we talking about here? Do you have the impression that um, women are not advocated for enough?
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes, yes, we don't have actually people to like call this out.
Mhm.
Sometimes we can see that happens. I seen it. Well, I seen it most in corporate. That
Mhm.
I seen it. Okay, there is always extra work to do
Mhm.
for me to show that I'm worthy of that
Mhm.
position,
Mhm.
worthy of that race, worthy of that of being the leader of certain projects. And I started to notice that pattern. There's like this. It always takes me to prove other people wrong all the time,
Mm.
and it gets draining. At a
Mhm.
certain point, it's draining. Okay, I had the knowledge. Again, I had the experience, but I always had to prove. I don't know, to put too much effort to
Mhm.
prove that I am worthy. I am prepared.
Mhm.
I can
Mhm.
do it. I know it, but it's hard to communicate that to others sometimes.
Lindora, I'll continue from where she ended to say that ordinary observation tells us that women are not silent people. They talk, right? They express themselves by talking, and advocacy has to do with talking. Every advocate can talk. So, do women really need advocacy when they can talk? As a matter of fact, they do have a voice. So, where is this advocacy coming from?
The advocacy comes from the point that we're not doing enough.
Okay.
Our advocacy efforts are at the lower level.
Mhm.
We need to not only talk about advocacy at community level, but we need to influence policies
Okay.
that will tackle those structural issues that that kind of keep women behind. Okay, if we look at Columbus, for example, there is an emphasis on pay equity.
Mm.
Why? Because it is said that 50% of women, the data shows that is from the Urban Institute, 50% of women, for example,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, women single-headed household women use 50% of their budget, what they get from their salaries, on childcare.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Look at childcare. Childcare is so expensive in this country. If women are using 50% of what they bring into the household to take care of their kids, the question is, there's also another data that says people use at least 50% on bills.
Yeah.
So if you look at a woman spending, for example, 50% on paying bills and the remaining 50% on childcare, what happens with her? There are other things that she needs to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue of poverty is keeping a lot of people behind, especially minorities. They don't know how to break out of there, and they are struggling. But at the city level, at the government level, there are some basic efforts. But unless people understand how to influence policies and make sure their voices are heard, it's not going to work. And how do they do that? Through leadership, of course, through representation.
Mm-hmm.
We have people in council, for example, that are, representing other groups. They are there and speaking for everybody, yes, but they're ensuring that their community groups are covered. They are ensuring that the issues that the community groups face are covered.
Mm-hmm.
But in as much as you hear me speak this loud, in as much as you hear my bell, in as much as you know that there are other movers and shakers in this city
Mm-hmm.
that are women leaders that are doing big things at community level, that is not being seen at the policy making level. And so we want to talk about advocacy to say what's stopping us from talking about the top level. Some people I've talked to seem to have some fears that because maybe if government is giving me some money and I go and speak loudly at the city level, I might not get that funding.
Yeah.
In the case of a nonprofit leader, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so that should not be the case. If you speak out and you don't get funding, that should make you speak out even more, to be louder about what you're doing. But the other idea or the piece to this is that you're not speaking out alone.
Okay.
We are saying that let's come together and share that weight,
Mhm.
because one person cannot do it alone. But if we hold hands and we go as a group, then we can influence that. And I've lived it and I know that it works. Why? Because today I talk about Lema Bowie, who won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Mhm.
And I've said it here before. I worked with Lema. I worked with other women. We advocated.
Okay.
When warlords, when all of our mills were being conscripted, there was a deadlock in our peace process when it came to the 14 years of civil war that we experienced. Men could not solve it. Women said enough was enough. We came up, we held hands, we said, if you don't sign that peace agreement, we will do this as women.
Wow.
And today is history. We didn't know what we were doing, but we felt that we had to speak up. And one good thing that we always said to ourselves as women was that if our children were to ask us tomorrow that there was 14 years of civil war in Liberia, what would you say? And we would say to ourselves that, well, the only way I contributed was to speak up, was to advocate. I did this and I did that. And so today I proudly sit here as one of those peace women that influenced change when it comes to the war in Liberia. And I think I can share that story. I can work with other women, and we can also ensure that women in Columbus can have the necessary tools, the skills, the opportunities to be able to make policy changes that will impact their lives.
We got that. That is Lynn Dora. She is the founder of the Business for Peace Community Development Foundation, and also the main person who has decided to bring Columbus women together so they can forge ahead as one voice. She's accompanied here in the studio by Mabel Castella. Mabel, I'll turn to you and talk about social cohesion, which is another term I found on your theme. Social cohesion. Do you have the impression that Columbus women interact socially? And if they do, how would you assess that? If they are not interacting socially, what is the problem?
Yes, actually, the problem is actually we don't know each other. We see other groups of immigrants. I was telling you earlier that most of the women groups existing in Ohio, they target certain certain immigrants for a region. For example, there are groups for Africans, there are groups for Latinos, there are groups for Asians, but we barely integrate. And that's what we are trying to do. The social cohesion is about getting all of us together and discussing what makes us similar and how we can work together to solve problems that affect us all.
Mhm.
So, regardless of the place where you're coming from, if we are immigrants, we share many things.
Yeah.
Regardless if you were born here or if you were first generation, the same. We share something.
Yeah.
And the idea of the social cohesion is that there are many things that make us the same. Then let's try to find that.
Yeah. So what has been the focus for this conference is trying to bring women from diverse
Mhm.
group together.
Right.
What has been the ups and downs in organizing such an event, especially dealing with women from different backgrounds?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are a lot of challenges. And one of the challenges is that we are talking about women that are already leaders and
Mhm.
they already have a lot of responsibilities with their own organizations.
Mhm.
Women that have businesses and they are pretty busy.
Mhm.
Women that have children and have a
Mhm.
lot of challenges to meet because they have to take care of the family. But the most important thing is that everybody is doing their part. We have a group of women that, regardless of their commitments, they made the time because
Mhm.
they believe that that this conference will have a good outcome.
Mhm.
They understand and they believe that we need this, that we need to work in this group and
Mhm.
make sure that we all get together.
Amazing. And there is a stereotype that has been around for a long time where people feel like, oh, women don't really come together, or women hate on one another, and women this and that. What's your, any of you can answer, what's your thoughts on that?
My thought is, look at us. We have completely different backgrounds. We come from complete different places.
Mhm.
We have different cultures,
Yeah.
but we are together. We are
Mhm.
working together. Our minds are connected somehow. So I believe that regardless your background,
Mhm.
regardless where you were raised,
Mhm.
we always have a factor that connects us, and that's what we are looking in this conference. That factor.
Yeah. Amazing.
And if I may come to that, it's interesting. I mean, that's something, being someone that have worked with women and worked in the space of empowerment for a long time.
Mhm.
That's something that's very common. People say it all the time.
Mhm.
But interestingly, as I look around the different communities here in Columbus and those that I've interacted or engaged with, I also hear, for example, Liberians don't support each other.
Mhm.
So in a way, it's a myth.
Yeah.
What I've come to find out is that when people become skeptical,
Mm.
when there are issues of trust
Yeah.
tied to the issues of accountability, when people are not sure of what it is that you want,
Mhm.
then they don't come 100%.
Yeah.
Or when you tell them about something and try to convince them and they come closer to try to understand what you want and they see that you are not somebody accountable, they're
Mhm.
not going to support you.
Yeah.
Or I've also seen some people, because of the bad experiences that they've had with other leaders or
Mhm.
with others, when you come up with the idea, they kind of make general assumptions. Oh, here we go again, is one of those.
Yeah.
So in that case, in the case of is one of those, that's where the leaders then feel challenged to try to prove that no, I'm not one of those.
Mhm.
Okay, we got that. This is Apex One Radio. It's exactly 1 minute to 11 here in the studio of the station. Remember, at midday, we'll have political point where we will be focusing on the upcoming November 5 US elections with guests speaking from all over all over the country. My name is Ernest. Grace is here. Our guests are Lindora and Mabel. They're speaking about the upcoming Multicultural Annual Conference organized by the Columbus Women's Connect. Right. So, last word on that theme and briefly, prosperity. What is the definition of prosperity, Lindora?
Wealth creation,
Okay.
people thriving. If someone is poor today, becoming, improving their lives tomorrow,
Mhm.
but through very intentional actions. We don't want to see a woman being poor today
Mhm.
and climbing a ladder and go to the middle point and falls back down. So prosperity is us working together, women having businesses, young women creating businesses, becoming entrepreneurs as well, so that what we as women today experience, our daughters wouldn't go through the same thing.
Beautiful. But we see a lot of that, Mabel, here. A lot of immigrant women run businesses. I mean, you go to Morse Road and jump into a Somali mall. I mean, you have women with big shops, then other women running home healthcare businesses. And there isn't any woman who is not doing something. So why talk about prosperity?
Yeah, as Lindora was explaining before, there are challenges. I mean, women know how to work,
Okay.
but there are challenges. For example, we were talking about the childcare.
Mhm.
50% of the income on a woman goes to childcare. So that's what is holding that prosperity. We were talking about the money that you paid in rent. The same, there is a large amount of the salary, the income that goes to the paying the rent. So that's what is holding us in achieving that prosperity. It's not the lack of work. It's not that the women are not doing anything. It's just those little details that we have to work. We have to work on to make sure that everyone can achieve the prosperity.
We'll take this last phase of our conversation to talk about the organization of the conference itself. It happens on November the 2nd, so we should be like in a week's time, correct?
Right.
All right, so just 7 days to that conference. Let us look at how prepared you are. But first, uh, whoever will come to that conference, what would they see there? What do you have on the agenda?
Those that are coming to the conference, the first thing they should expect to see is colors. We want it to be colorful.
Okay.
It's multicultural. We are encouraging people to come with a cultural attire. We are blessed to be in a city space where that is considered very diverse. I talked about having in our group alone, we have at least 20 country representations. We want people to come and showcase their cultures. So they will come and see that. We have performers. We will have performances for 2 different groups. So they will see some kind of artistic show at the conference. More to that, we want to hear some inspirational messages. We want to have the space to talk about those issues that matter to us, things that we are talking about here, but that other women and leaders would talk about differently. When you come to that conference, it's going to be a women's conference, but expect to see men. Why? Because in my own experience, for example, I've realized, and it comes to the same thing of women not working together, or maybe a cultural group not working to support each other. But I also see that in terms of men supporting women, the same thing applies. If men understand what women are about to do and they see the vision along with that, they become very supportive. I've come across a lot of supportive men in this city. We are saying to them, come from this first conference, come and hear what we are up to. Come and hear why we are concerned about women connecting and walk this journey with us. So you're going to see men. You're going to see young people. I talked about the intergenerational connections. You're going to see young people at that conference. We're not bringing the boys at this level. We hope as we go along, we will create that space as well for young boys to understand how to support girls as well. But you're going to see that we will have ethnic food at the conference. We will have speeches, and the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Lima Roberta Bowie, she's currently in Africa. She's not going to be here. She has said to me, Lindora, if I'm in the US, I would definitely love to come to Columbus. But unfortunately, she's not here. So what are we going to see? She's sending us a video message. She's sending us a message to the women of Columbus. She's sending a message to the people of Ohio and Columbus about something around women, peace, and security. What that message is, we don't know yet. but come and see women standing up and committing to holding each other's hands. At the end of that conference, we're going to have basically a call to action. We're going to tell the conference what are the things that we're going to do in 2025, for example, and why we think they should support us. We will hopefully have Chief Todd from the Department of Development who
Mhm.
will bring to us the proclamation from the governor's office.
Great.
That's amazing. So I'm interested in Lima Bowie, and I've always looked forward to her speeches. And then you have another speaker, Fran Fraser.
Yeah.
Those
Keynote
are
speaker.
those are incredible women.
Exactly.
So what do you think their presence will and their insight will kind of do to the audience, or how will it benefit the audience?
We hope that it will spark something.
Mhm.
It will make people think, and that's where the inspiration will come up. And we hope that people would then aspire to doing more.
Mhm.
So they've been there. Lima
Mhm.
has traveled the world. She's done a lot of things. She's a women peace and security activist out there.
Mhm.
She's going to bring a message. Like I said, I don't know what that message is, but one thing I know is going to be something that will spark something
yeah.
in everybody to want to do more. I
Mhm.
think Fran will also come with the same thing,
Mhm.
working with women, girls, Black Girls Rising. That's her organization that she founded. She's provided a lot of support to women and girls. I think she's going to also come with that message and
Mhm.
being an African American in that space, so that others who are not African American will see that, yes, like Mabel said, we have common issues and we
Mhm.
definitely need to work together. This conference will also celebrate the 24th anniversary of the UN Resolution 1325. We will be talking about all of those things and what to look for next.
I can't wait. I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Apex One Radio. We are live from the USA, and we are just a couple of minutes to the end of this edition of Snapshots, which is holding this before the women's conference on November the 2nd this year. So briefly, in 30 seconds, just tell us about the various topics that will be discussed and their speakers, please.
Well, we have one keynote speaker, and what you did here today in terms of looking at the theme
Mhm.
and the different words in there, those are things that we're going to talk about. So that keynote speaker will bring to us a message. We'll have the proclamation, but it's generally that theme. We're going to talk about social cohesion. We'll talk about leadership, advocacy, and prosperity. What it means for us from different cultural backgrounds. What it means for us as Columbus women.
Okay, that is interesting. And any other items apart from just talking and talking?
Like I mentioned, there will be cultural performances.
Okay,
We
perfect.
have one of our sisters who's a member of the collective from Colombia.
Mhm.
She will be working with a team to do one of her, I don't know how many they are, but they're going to do some cultural performances. We have others from, for example, Cameroon. Other ethnic food will be there. People will be there.
Okay.
So hopefully people can have the flags and talk about their groups and whatnot.
I'll just ask each of you for 10 seconds each. What are your expectations? What do you hope to see, like a change after this conference takes place? Let me begin with Mabel.
Yeah, what we hope to see is women engagement
Okay.
in this conference,
Mhm.
and women following up. It's
Okay.
not gonna be something that is gonna happen once a year. No,
Mhm.
the idea is we are gonna know each other. We're gonna discuss about the issues that affect us, and we're gonna do something. We're gonna work together. So
Okay.
that's the expectation.
Something in terms of projects?
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, that we as one of the key expectations of this conference is that we close that conference with a call to action,
Okay.
but also an agenda.
Okay.
An agenda that says on those four words that we talked about: leadership, advocacy, social cohesion, and prosperity. What are we going to do as a collective between now and next year? And based on that, we're going to work together to fundraise and do those things so that when we come next year, we will be saying, okay, these are the things we set out to do for 1 year, and this is what we've achieved, what our challenges, opportunities, and how do we move forward.
Perfect. So we're about to run off. Maybe you want to remind us of the venue of that conference, the time, the address, and what people need to know when they're coming there.
Okay, first thing to know, go to Eventbrite. Look
Okay.
for this first multicultural conference. You have to register online. The tickets are $15.
Okay.
You register online. You come to the conference at 1200 South Wagoner Road.
Mhm.
It's at the Messiah Lutheran Church. They have a facility that is known as the Fellowship Hall. They've granted us that hall to use, and we are very excited. So come. It's in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. The address and everything is up there. So please go to Eventbrite, prepare to pay for your tickets, and show up at the conference. We'll be there to welcome you.
Prepare to pay for your tickets and show up at the first multicultural annual conference organized by the Columbus Women Connect under the theme Feminine Leadership and Advocacy Pathways to Social Cohesion and Prosperity. And so it takes place on November the 2nd, 2024. Is that a Saturday?
Yes.
Yeah.
November 2nd, 2024. That should be next Saturday in just 7 days. Time 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So it begins at 9 a.m. That is in the morning. And so let all roads lead to the venue.
Yes.
Let's remind us.
1200 Wagoner Road.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you so much, Lindora and Mebe, for
having
coming.
us.
If we had much time, we would have talked more about this. It's just that we have another show coming up in
No, this is
in
good.
less than 30 minutes. Well,
We'll be back.
perhaps maybe a last word to women, especially the ones who are not engaged in any such thing in the community. One last word before you go.
One last word is if you're not a community leader, if you're not a business owner, please come anyways. If you are a woman,
Mhm.
that's more than enough.
Okay, Linda.
Last word, reach out, come and learn more about how you can be involved.
All right, Grace, we're running off. You are taking part in yet another conference that is coming up. Do you want to just shed a little bit of light on it before we go?
Yeah, we have the Just Like You Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and we're hosting a women's wellness conference that will be focused on the well-being of women, how we take care of ourselves, and mostly our mental health. A lot of women go through many challenges in silence. And this conference is for us to have a place of vulnerability and a safe place that we can be able to talk to one another, encourage one another, and help one another. We have women from different diverse backgrounds and different professions will be coming. We have therapists, we have nurse practitioner, we have a lot of people, social workers, who will
Mm-hmm.
be coming for us to discuss those issues that are affecting women in the society. And I will be at 3 p.m. today on Cleveland Avenue at the Vineyard,
Mm-hmm.
North Columbus. And it will be amazing. It will be great. We will be talking about how older women and younger women can be able to bridge that gap of generational challenges.
And that will take place at 4555 Columbus, Cleveland Avenue, Columbus, Ohio 43229. 4555 Cleveland Avenue, Columbus, Ohio 43229. It starts at exactly 3 p.m. We have Apex One Radio's Shin Tebong, who will be covering that event live from that end, transmitted on the airwaves of Apex One Radio. That will be from 3 p.m. today. Well, take the rendezvous if you are in Columbus, Ohio. You may want to stop over there and see what's going on. Um, I'm tempted to ask one last question, which I think is important. What is the role of men in all of this? Are men always invited to come take part, in such conferences?
Well, they have a role to support.
Okay,
They can support financially, they can support morally.
okay,
Some men,
but they cannot add their voices to it.
of course, they can.
Okay,
And that's part of supporting.
okay.
I know, some men were raised by their
Mhm.
grandmothers.
Mhm.
They were raised by women.
I'm asking a question
know?
because some women have always said that their voices become even tougher and more meaningful when men join their add their voices to theirs.
Yeah, some women, they have that experience, and I think it's because when you put fewer women in a space with more men,
Okay.
and you don't expect those men to sit and discuss women's issues.
Mhm.
So we are the ones with the issues. We are the ones who know where it burns,
Mhm.
and we are the ones who want to talk about it. But it doesn't mean that some men are not aware of some of the issues that women go through and that they don't want to support. So we are creating that space for men to come in and be a part of that conversation and make some recommendations as to how they think we can go about this and how they think they can support us. And then we'll have our own spaces to talk about those specific issues.
Linda and Mabel, good luck. Have a
Thank you so
fantastic
much.
conference,
Thank you.
and we hope to have you back on Apex One Radio not too long from now.
We
Thank
will be
you.
back to talk about how it went.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Grace, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
we will talk again later today. And for those of you out there, thank you so much for having been with us throughout this beautiful conversation we've had with these great female leaders in our community. Hopefully, they'll be back on the airwaves. But for today and for tonight, Apex One Radio will join other women to continue the conversation, which will be aired live on this station. Do have a fantastic rest of the day with support from Maxell Ajit, who was our producer. Grace and Ernest are saying bye for now and see you shortly.